Hello, my name is Marilena Stanescu, and today I'll be explaining my analysis of Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. Okay, to begin my presentation, I will be explaining the plot of the story. So the plot begins with the main character Max creating a lot of mischief and wreaking havoc around his house. In order to punish him, his mom says he can't eat dinner and sends him to his room. He then uses his imagination to create a whole fantasy land or dreamscape where he meets all these monsters on an island who are all deemed wild just as he was by his mom. After having loads of fun, Max gets tired of having these shenanigans with the monsters and ends up wanting to return home. The monsters all got angry at the fact that Max wanted to go home and scared him off the island as he left. When he returned home, there was food waiting for him, showing that his mom still loves him despite his antics. Okay. According to the Freudian perspective, I believe there's a deliberate, repeated use of oral imagery in this story. After his antics around the house, Max tells his mother he's going to eat her up. Therefore, his mother does not make him food. The beasts in his fantasy have sharp, gnashing teeth and sharp claws, which actually represent Max's view of himself being a monster capable of eating someone up. The monsters also say they will eat Max when he leaves, further playing into this idea of oral imagery. Max's mother's love is quite literally represented by the food she makes. When Max returns home to the warm food, he is reassured of his mother's love. According to Freud, Max may have an oral fixation and may in fact be representing the oral fixation of the author himself. The author of this book, Maurice Sendak, had a history of undergoing psychoanalysis himself, and his best friend of 50 years was a psychoanalyst also. Therefore, I fully believe that these instances of oral imagery in the story were deliberate. In the book, Max feels fear, loneliness, and a longing for home. These are all complex emotions that people used to think children could not understand. However, the story accurately represents the belief that children are complex emotional beings who feel these emotions quite powerfully. Freud was one of the first people to bring this idea to light, that children are complex beings who experience things just like we do. Max's island is actually just a physical response to built up repressed aggression that he is beginning to express. Young boys will often play a role of some violent or aggressive person in order to display their toxic or hypermasculinity, However, anger tends to come with a lot of shame and guilt that ends up getting repressed. Max feels frustration when he cannot find an effective method to express his boy anger. And in turn, he creates a different place for himself within his own mind. He becomes king in order to cope with his feelings of helplessness at home. As stated earlier, this plays into the idea that children experience emotions and are complex just as adults are. The monsters in the story actually represent Max's id, or subconscious, as he sees himself as an animalistic beast with sharp claws and teeth. Him putting on a wolf costume when he causes mischief further proves his theory of him battling his animalistic id. This is quite literally a story about Max fighting his inner demons, his unconscious, or himself. Now, according to the Jungian perspective, I see Max battling two different archetypes he has of himself. The first one is the archetype of the outlaw. Based on wanting liberation from his mother, he creates mischief and likes to wreak havoc during the day, but he feels lonely and like an outcast at the end of the night. This is how he appears to the world and to himself. This side of himself is battling the archetype of the ruler, which is what he wants to be. This side of himself is shown during the dream, where he sees himself as king, and he is the one with the control. He even refuses to give the monsters their dinner to display his power and control. Max's shadow self is also represented in the dream. The monster's behavior and the appearance of the monsters themselves represent how Max sees his shadow self and how he sees his aggression, anger, frustration. Jung has even suggested in his literature that the shadow will appear to you in a dream in the form of a snake, monster, demon, or something of the like. Max's whole problem is that he does not know how to express his shadow self through his persona. He is still expressing his unconscious thoughts and desires to the world, and has not grown up and learned when it is correct to express that side of you to fit in with society and culture's norms. Which is why his mother punished him in the first place. Once Max figures out that he does not actually want to be ruler of the wild things, he returns home as a presumably changed boy. This also plays into Jung's theory that people change when confronted by the unconscious. Max's character itself represents the Jungian archetype of the child, innocent, full of creativity, and undergoing constant growth and transition. These are my works cited. Thank you.